You're listening to the SweetLife Entrepreneur Podcast. Simplified strategies to grow your service business and launch a life you love faster. With business mentor and entrepreneur activator, April Beach.
Live your most purposeful life, or, to follow your dreams or to grow your business. A lot of people think they just need to take care of their schedule, but, it goes deeper than that, because if we're stretched too thin in all these other areas, then we're kind of tapped out in our capacity.
Okay, so I'll go the angle of so you can grow your business.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Of course.
Alrighty. Okay, I'll come back and read your intro later. And then is the intro that you put on here still the one that you want? Does this speak to the new direction of your business? Okay.
But do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, let me read it to you. It says, Corie Clark is the author of The Simplicity Project, business educator, and creator of the Purposeful Planner. She loves not only helping others find their purpose, but equipping them to live it out and turn it into a profitable business.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, let's do it. Okay, I am joined today by Corie Clark, and she is a gem. I've just seen her for the first time. For those of you guys who are following us behind the scenes of the podcast recording on our YouTube channel, just seeing this lady, I just already want to be her friend and go on girls trips with her and talking to her for the last 10 minutes here getting ready for this interview. Corie is a purpose-driven business consultant. She's a purpose-driven business educator and developer, and she is on the show today to talk to us about 4 key areas to help us create margin so that you can grow your business and your life and your dreams and anything else. So Corie, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, April. It's so nice to meet you face to face, and I'm just honored to be on your show. I'm really excited about this.
Thanks. So tell us about you. Tell us your story first, of course. How did you get into this? What was your journey to entrepreneurship? Yeah,
so I think I was born an entrepreneur. I think a lot of us are. Looking back, I definitely was a little entrepreneur. I always wanted to have my own business. I always wanted to sell things, find ways to make money that were outside the box. And I owned a salon back in the day, and about 8 years ago, I really started just feeling this need and this longing to do more with my life. And I really wasn't sure what that was. I was, raising kids, and I have 3 kids, and now they are 18, 16, and 13. So at the time they were much younger, and I was a lot busier with little kid stuff. And but I just felt this longing for more. And then in 2014, I joined this wild online Facebook group. It was, people were what? You have friends on Facebook? What are you doing? But it was put together by the author John Acuff, and he was just kind of doing this experiment and getting people to start something that they've been wanting to start but have been putting off. And for me, I was just okay, I'm starting my blog, I'm writing. I don't know what this is going to look like, but this is what I want to do right now, is just share my dreams and inspiration with the world. And what I realized was at the beginning of 2014, I just didn't have the space in my life to follow my dreams. I was too busy. Our schedule was too full. Our house was chaos, and I wasn't really my healthiest. I just was feeling very burnt out, just barely trying to chase this dream. And so then in February of that year, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to pursue this right now. I'm actually going to spend the month trying to simplify our life and create some margin in our life so that I can actually follow my dreams and start a business. So I set out to do that, and I kind of kept track of what I was doing, and I actually turned that into a book, to the Simplicity Project, and I self-published that, and I was scared to death. I was what am I even doing? I just made myself an author.
I love it.
I know. And so, but it's funny because, you start to do those little scary things, and they give you more courage to do the next thing. So I launched that book, and as people started reading it, they were like, oh my gosh, Corie, like, can you make a planner that implements these things that you're teaching? And what I taught in the book was really just, it's all very simple little things, little tweaks you can make in your life to create that margin. So it wasn't anything, you know, some newfound, like, crazy wild system. It was just actually, like, assessing your life and creating that margin. So I thought, hey, like, let's pursue the world of making our own planner. And I did not go to, like, design school. Like, I knew nothing about graphic design. I knew nothing about, like, the printing industry. But, you know, I used the internet and I figured it out. And so we launched our first planner, the Purposeful Planner, at the end of 2014, so for the 2015 year, and we sold out like in about a month.
Wow.
And my husband and I were like, we were packing the orders, like we have a distribution center now, but me and my husband and the kids were in the garage packing orders, shipping orders.
Oh my gosh, I love your story.
It was insane. And at one point, I remember my husband was like, well, I guess we're like in the planner business now. I was like, I guess so. So, and it just kind of took off and grew, and we kept releasing planners, and we added some other products, you know, like notepads and things like that. So it's just been a wild ride, and it's just like one thing has led to the next. And what I've realized is I really do love like helping people find their purpose, and then helping them like live it out as well. Like creating tools that help them, or coaching them through whatever sort of blocks they're having. And, you know, it's just kind of morphed. And so over the last year, that business has pivoted, and we still sell planners, but, you know, we kind of a year ago sat down and I was like, okay, I don't want a stationery company. Like, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to equip people. And so under the umbrella of purposeful living. So as we're equipping people, the planner is one of those tools, but, you know, we have other tools as well. And so I just love the interaction with people, and I love helping women just really discover who they are, and that they were created on purpose, for a purpose, and they can turn that into a profitable business.
I love your story. I see, and I didn't even know all that. No, and I didn't even know all of that before we started actually, you know, recording this podcast. That you just have this vibe of somebody that's just so genuine and so dedicated to the purpose of what you do and the why behind you do. And then personally, I'll say to find another mom with teenagers is a really hard thing to do in this space. There's so many mompreneurs with babies out there, but like my oldest son turned 17 today on the day of the recording. And so I think our kids are like the same age.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to hear your story and to hear how your kids were helping within the process. And we just guide those experiences for our kids that they, like my kids have done total grunge work. As a matter of fact, my oldest son right now is doing all the editing for our new vlog. And it's just getting to see them in that kind of grunge process, and then showing them, hey, look, you can build whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Look at, we're sitting here in the garage packing this stuff. I think it's one of the coolest stories ever. And they'll remember that like forever, whether they choose to be entrepreneurs or not. They'll definitely, you know, have some of that in them from being your children.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was so fun, like bringing them on that journey. And sorry,
you're good.
It actually, like, in fact, when we chose to move to distribution center, they were super bummed because, I mean, we paid them, and they were like, what? Like, we're not going to get paid anymore. But it got to the point where we literally could not be doing it out of our garage anymore.
Well, that's a great problem to have.
I know. But I mean, it was really fun. And I do love, like you said, I love that they see that. I love that they see anything is possible. That they really can follow their dreams. They don't have to live inside, you know, this box of go work for someone else unless they want to. You know, I just am a huge fan of instilling that in our kids, that they are like, they can choose the life they want.
Yeah. Yeah. So So awesome. So important as far as what we're doing. And I would say that the majority of our listeners here to the Sweet Life podcast either have kids or plan to have kids. Actually, we're just getting such an influx of listeners of moms with kids that are teenagers. I think that there's a lot of like mompreneur podcasts out there that talk to moms and babies. And of course, the strategies that you're going to talk about today apply to everybody and what we talk about in the show. But there's a certain connection, and I think there's a certain place that we get at in our lives as women that, you know, when our kids can take care of their own physical needs, then we're like, oh, okay, now I can remember what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And let's build something that's really deep, really meaningful, really purposeful, because, you know, we're kind of in, it's like this sweet spot of parenthood, I think. And so it's very, very special to connect with you because you're in that sweet spot too.
Yes.
So let's talk today. You're going to talk to us about the four key areas to create margin. Mm-hmm. So first of all, define margin for us.
Right. Okay. So the reason I phrase it that way is because I feel like, let's say we just split these four key areas of our life into like 4 boxes: your health, your home, your finances, and your time. If you're stretched like super thin to like the 4 like walls of that box, then what happens is it's going to bleed into other areas. You know what I mean? So if your time is stretched super thin, like it's going to start to mess with your health. Your home's going to be a mess because you don't have time to clean it. You know, it starts messing with other areas. So if we can create some margin in each of those areas so that we're not stretched super thin, it's going to help us like manage those areas better when we do need to be spending extra time on a launch or a project. It's okay because we've created some margin for it, and we're not going to be like making our family sacrifice for it or our health sacrifice for it. So that's what I realized was I didn't need to give my life a crazy overhaul. I just needed to kind of take an assessment and figure out, okay, where am I stretched too thin, and how can I make a little margin in this area so that I can start doing the things I want to do.
So it's kind of like a buffer zone. It's like space.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of space to give and take, and just kind of putting the blocks together in a way that enables them to be a little bit pliable. Is that
exactly.
It? Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. Because it really doesn't take a lot. It is like you said, that buffer area, just a little buffer area, so that when things start to get a little tight in one of those areas, it's not affecting the rest of our life. We can kind of figure out how to manage that and move through it without it like destroying our health or, you know, destroying our home or whatever it may be.
Right. I love that you said that too. So it's like when these areas need to give and take. And I think that that's something that a lot of business coaches and podcasts don't speak to that much, because, you know, they want to present this perfect landscape of what it's going to be to launch, and that's not it at all. And if they have, you know, if our listeners out there, if they're told, okay, we need to have these rigid lines, and then what happens with those rigid lines is they're actually really frail, like you're saying, and they get broken. But actually, successful entrepreneurship is the holistic journey through business development and life development and family management, at least for our listeners. So it's not if, it's when that's going to happen. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, like you're saying, these are 4 key areas. What are the 4 key areas?
So for me, now when I went through the Simplicity Project, I actually didn't even have this full-fledged business yet. So you technically could throw your business in there. But the reason I have these 4 key areas is because these are areas that affect everybody. Whether you're an entrepreneur or not, like you need to be taking care of your health, and you need to be taking care of your home. Like I don't care what you think. Like, and for me, like, when I wrote this, I was in the thick of it. My kids still had lots of toys, you know, so there was a lot of clutter, and a cluttered home creates a cluttered mind. And so your health, your home, your finances, and your time. And when you can start, like what I started doing was I just kind of took an assessment. Like I just looked at my health. Okay, like what am I happy about in this area? what do I need to work on? Like, am I healthy? Am I moving my body? Am I spending time like in the morning doing my devotions and taking care of my spiritual health? Am I taking care of my mental health? And really just assessing what that looks like and what I wanted it to look like. And then the same thing with the next area, my home. Like, what do I want my home to feel like? What do I want people to feel when they walk into my home? Do they feel welcome? Do they feel at peace? And then our finances, just taking a good hard look at our finances. Are they where they should be? Are we sticking to our budget? Are we creating wealth where we can create wealth? And then our time. And obviously, like, your schedule changes a lot. So I'm like assessing our time all the time. I'm actually like looking at these areas a lot because I want to double check myself. Like, are we spending our time wisely? Are we saying yes to too many things that are actually pulling us away from our purpose? And when you have these areas, I really don't even think you need to add your business into this. Like, your business, for me, like you said, it's holistic. It's part of our life. It's who we are. And so it kind of fits in all those areas. I have to be a healthy person to be running this business. I have to be taking care of my mental health. I have to be moving my body so that I have energy and strength. And, that's kind of why I split it into those areas.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you speaking to that. We do talk a lot about that in the show, the connection between, a strong body makes a healthy mind. And there's so much data out there. As a matter of fact, one of my clients recommended a book called Spark that is the science necessarily behind that. But there's so much data out there that talks about making sure that there is a direct correlation between taking care of ourselves as entrepreneurs, especially as women, because we have a history of allowing ourselves to become martyrs. I think more than men do. And in order to run that successful and profitable business, we need to understand that our value and that you are your business, you are your brand, you are your company, you are the one coming up with the ideas and implementing it, and that self-care and the health is so important. But then you also talked about spiritual health. And this isn't necessarily a Christian podcast, but our listeners know that I'm a Christian. But whatever that is for anybody listening, I think that there is a huge importance that we need to pay attention to making sure that we're mentally and spiritually where we need to be to create. And so I appreciate that you mentioned that. I used to do this routine, and I actually picked it up again this year, but like every single Monday morning before I did anything, it was like praise and worship. It was like just me and my dogs, like after the kids go to school. And it wasn't necessarily a business strategy, and it wasn't anything that I wasn't reading a business book or listening to a podcast or anything. It was just like 30 minutes of like just me and the dogs in the living room, and everybody else was gone. And it was just like prayer and worship and listening. And I swear, like when I do that, it's almost like that, like the fire, like kindling the fire for the rest of my week. And I just think that mental and spiritual health is just so important as physical health too. So that's a huge tangent to say that I appreciate that you brought that up, because a lot of business developers don't talk about that. And I think it needs to be talked about. Yeah.
And it is, I mean, to me, it's almost, not even almost, it's more important to be taking care of your spiritual and emotional health, mental health, whatever, than your physical health. Like, I'm like, yes, like you do need to be moving your body, but if you're not taking care of your mind and your spiritual health, like you might be super fit, but if your mind is a hot mess, like, you're setting yourself up for some sort of failure.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And so for me, it's like, same thing. I have like in the morning, I start off with, I read my Bible, I pray, I have like a little journal sequence, but not system that I do. It's just my own in a notebook, but I go through like affirmations, and I write down my dreams, and I write down my intentions for the day. And when you just get your mind in the right place before you like go into your day, it's honestly, it works. Like when I don't do it, I end up such a hot mess.
Right.
or like when we're out of town and I'm not really in my routine, I'm like, I get so frustrated. I'm like, oh, why do I feel like crap? And I'm like, oh, because I haven't been doing my routine.
Right. What I need to be healthy. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so our 4 different areas that you recommend that we create space or margin in are health, home, finances, and time. Can you give us any tips about how to go about doing this?
Yeah. So in my book, I kind of talk about how it really is so much more simple than some people want to make it. Like, I am a huge fan of doing whatever it takes to fix something or to create that margin. And what I realized was it did not need a crazy overhaul. Like right now, like the Marie Kondo thing is super popular. And I love it because I'm like, yes, people, get rid of your clutter. But at the same time, some of us are busy moms and entrepreneurs, and we don't have a whole day to like Marie Kondo our house. You know what I mean? And so, sorry. So like one thing that I am a huge fan of is that like you can do anything for 15 minutes.
Right.
So if you have a cluttered closet, you can set your timer for 15 minutes and you can go fill a bag. You don't have to do it perfect. Just do a little bit. And same thing with your health. Like if you are someone who feels like you are very unhealthy and overweight, like can you just move your body for 15 minutes? Can you go for a walk for 15 minutes? And in your finances, like if you're like, up to your eyeballs in debt and you don't even know where to start, like it's so much easier than we think to just look at your bank statement, look at your budget, like what's something you can give up for the month? Like, can you give up Starbucks for the month? Can you just give up a few things for the month? It's just about making those little changes that over time they end up like compounding and making such a huge difference. And I feel like in this day and age, people want, they want the overhaul. They want the extreme makeover. And it's just not ideal for us when you are raising kids and running a business and just living in America these days. Like, nobody has a weekend to make over their whole life.
Right. It's so true, though. Yeah, so just like the little changes over time. I think you're right. I think that, we talk about this too. I think it was like the second? Gee whiz. Maybe it was like the first podcast episode ever of the SweetLife podcast was Don't Make Perfect the Enemy. And I actually did a podcast about the fact that I had stalled launching this podcast for like 6 months because I wanted it to be perfect. And so I didn't do anything. And I think that I find myself that I do that in so many different areas of my life. So your words are so encouraging to somebody like me, where I'm a very, kind of go big or go home girl, and I try to control a lot of things. And I can't say I'm a perfectionist because my house is definitely far from perfect, but there are certain areas I really want it. If I can't give it 100%, I find myself being like, it's okay, I'm just not going to do anything.
Yes.
And I think that you're right, that there are so many people like that have a tendency to be like, I am, where we just don't start it. It's almost like, okay, I'm not going to start, counting my macros in my diet again until Monday because I know I'm going to eat bad over Super Bowl weekend. And so I'm going to do nothing. Whereas if I ate, pretty well throughout the week, then maybe I wouldn't have gained 5 pounds on Super Bowl Sunday type thing. So
yes.
I mean, does that
totally? And that is so funny because that's really funny if that was your first episode, because I just recorded my first few episodes and my first one was about perfectionism and letting it go so that you can actually do something with your life. And that's one thing that I learned back when I was in that group with John Acuff. He has a line in one of his books that says 90% perfect and shared with the world changes more lives than 100% perfect and stuck in your head. And so when I read that, it was like this huge aha moment for me. And that's why I was like, hey, I'm starting my blog. It's not perfect. It's not going to be what I want it to be, but I am starting it. And then I wrote the book, and there's no way the book is what I wanted it to be, but I put it out there and it did start changing lives, and same with the planner, same with anything I do. And it's not like I do things messy or poor quality. But I have gotten to the point where it's like, you know what? I'm just going to put this out there because that's going to bring the clarity I need to take the next step. So it is so important. Yeah. Just to do, it's better to just do it. Whether it's right or not, just get it out there and do it.
And let's make sure people know where to find you too with that. So your new podcast you launched is called Purpose with Corie Clark. So if you guys are looking for that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I really want to hear that episode, we'll make sure all of that is in the show notes for you. Or you can just go to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen and search Purpose with Corie Clark. Okay, so for our listeners that are like, I just really feel like I want some action steps. We've talked about so much on this episode. If there's a woman who's listening and she's like, okay, yes, I have teenage kids too. Yes, I'm launching a business too. Yes, I want to grow in purpose and I want to simplify my life as well. You know, this podcast is for me. You guys are talking directly to me. What's the first step that you would recommend she do after the show turns off? Because we want this podcast to really be actionable for ladies like me and like you who are listening on the go.
Yeah, I think the first thing you can do, and I talk about it in my book, I talk about it like when people come to my website, the very first thing you could do is sit down and take an assessment of your life. Like, get a bird's eye view, even if you just grab a piece of paper and put it into like quadrants and write health, home, finances, and time on it, and just start thinking about, what does my life look like and what do I want it to look like? Because sometimes we don't really take the time to think about that, and we think, well, like, my life's good, I'm good, I'm just going to keep plugging along. And when you actually take that assessment and just ask yourself some of those questions and realize, like, you know what, actually, I do need to work like on my health a little bit, or you know what, actually, like, my home is perfect, it's organized, I don't need to work on that, then awesome, like, now you can move to another area. And so that is like the first step, is really taking that assessment, getting a bird's eye view of your life, and asking yourself the tough questions, and then being willing, like, okay, what's like one small change I can make in this area this week? What's one small change I can make in our finances this month? You know, just being willing to start to make the change.
I love that. Thank you so much. And so we're talking about health, home, finances, and time. That's super awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I will make sure that everybody has access to you in the show notes. And you talked about 5 ways to simplify your life, this kind of strategy sheet that our listeners can also grab. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's just 5 like simple, tangible things like you can do today. Like, you literally can do all 5 of them today. You don't have to have a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of space. Like, they're just super easy, quick. Set your timer for 15 minutes and do this. And you literally can get all 5 done in one day.
Wow. I love it. Okay, so we'll make sure that the link to 5 ways to simplify your life, your podcast, your business, and your programs, and exactly what that looks like. You help women find purpose in their business and walk through the steps of really identifying what that is and moving forward and building their company. And I really love that. So I want to make sure that women have access to you as well. For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on this show with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that we are like in the same space and stage of life. It, like you said, it is rare to find people that have like teenagers that are entrepreneurs. So, and I love it. That's why I'm doing it.
I know it's perfect. And we're binding together as a group of women kind of in this sweet spot. So, if you guys are listening to this, connect with Corie and connect with me on Instagram and send us a message if you are listening and you have kids that are either like preteen, you're kind of getting into that sweet spot, or they're teenagers and you want to connect further with us, because I know that both of us would love to hear from you, because either people don't have kids or, there's just a lot of women that are just starting to launch a business because they just had a baby and they realize they will never want to leave that child and go back to a 9-to-5 job. And so there's this huge surge of entrepreneurs in that space. But those of us that are that are here still getting traction and growing in the teenage years. It's awesome. We need to have we need to have a teenage mom entrepreneur retreat just for the moms,
yes,
like in Hawaii or something.
Oh yes, that sounds amazing.
That sounds great.
Count me in.
All right, awesome. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.